This is the second in my series of being a good ally. And this morning, I'm especially focusing on race and ethnicity. So I feel like this is a very important one for us this year, especially, but always. As I've worked through this sermon, I decided to organize it around the idea of stumbling blocks. For those of us who have been on this anti-racism journey as white allies, we found ourselves often stumbling, falling, not doing the right thing perhaps. And so I thought, well, as I'm doing my reading and learning, as I'm stumbling myself, perhaps what would be beneficial would be to think about those and become more and more aware of them and draw these to your attention as well and have you think about some of these as well. I've been thinking a lot about stumbling blocks and stumbling this summer as I myself have been on my own path to try to get in better shape. I've been trying to do fast walking or jogging, and Greg's been with me a lot of times on the beach. We're very privileged, and we know it, to live right around the corner. And when we're in Glenn County, we live in a condo that's right around the corner from an access to the beach. And so we just get on that beach and go. And you would think, well, there's not any stumbling blocks on a beach, nothing that can make you fall or mess up on a beach, just sand. But yes, there are. And I have found from experience, there are, as we've gone along. There are those Johnson rocks on St. Simon that are supposed to help with erosion. They get pulled out more into the sea. There's with them, and also cracked shells. Greg and I have both cut our feet. There are tide pools that show up that weren't there before. There, children dig holes in the sand and don't refill them. And if you're not careful, you'll step in those holes. There are critters running about that you have to avoid: two-legged, four-legged, six-legged, eight-legged. And then if we're tired, we just stumble over our own feet. So there are many things that can make us fall and stumble and perhaps hurt ourselves and perhaps hurt others. And similarly, I have found on my long road on my anti-racist journey that there are stumbling blocks. There are things that I need to be aware of. Some of these things I've learned the hard way, but you don't have to learn it all the hard way, folks. You can listen to others and you can read. I'm not going to read through all these books, but here are some excellent books, and there are more that will share, and you can have a better understanding of some of these stumbling blocks and things that can harm you as you're attempting to do something good, but we can mess up, we can fall back, we can cause harm. And I especially had encouraged you all to read the book by Layla Said, Me and White Supremacy, but all of these have very, very good possibilities. So I'm just going to share a few of these with you this morning. And bring them to light and to your attention. And many of you already know about these, but it's always helpful to review. One of the stumbling blocks that many of us found out about early on was our own white privilege, those of us that are white. This was brought to our attention by Peggy McIntosh's essay on the invisible knapsack way back in 1989. She talked to us about how, we're just swimming in this pool of white privilege and don't even realize the things that we carry along with us that open doors for us, that make things easier for us. And that these are just things that we have simply because of our skin color. For instance, here's some of the things she brought to our attention. She says, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Now, we just heard Leon discuss how hard that was sometimes in Unitarian Universalism. So they have these special mechanisms now with blue and with drums so that they can intentionally do this. But most of us have no hard time with doing those kinds of things. It's just part of the privilege that we have. Another one, she says, if I should need to move, I can be pretty sure of renting or purchasing housing in an area which I can afford and which I would want to live. A third one, she says, I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant to me. So she has these long lists, and people have added more to them. But actually, since 1989, we have become very aware of how even more serious this is, because we've had the possibilities of having these cameras and phones with us everywhere we go that people can record things. And we're learning how much this privilege really means. For instance, I can say, I can grill out, swim in the neighborhood pool, and go bird watching without someone calling the police, you know? And also, I can jog in my neighborhood, go to the store to buy some candy, reach in my glove compartment to get my insurance card without fear of getting shot. Another stumbling block that many of us have found out more recently than that is white fragility. White fragility. Robin DiAngelo lifted that to our awareness in her excellent book, White Fragility. And as you see, I was fortunate to get her to sign my copy back at General Assembly in 2019. The subtitle is Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. I know you probably noticed that as you attempted to make conversations either on Facebook or otherwise. Maybe even you have been part of this ourselves when folks connect us with something, some racism because of white privilege. And we say, oh, no, not me, not that. I'm a good person. Robin DiAngelo said, we consider a challenge to our racial worldviews as a challenge to our very identities as good moral people. We just think, oh, if I'm connected with that, they're saying that I'm a bad person. Thus, we perceive any attempt to connect us to the system of racism as an unsettling and unfair moral offense. We get all fragile about it, and others do as well as we try to communicate with them. So that's a stumbling block we have and others have on our journeys to be anti-racist. This is one that's very concerning, and it's tone policing, tone policing. Well, what this is, if you hear somebody saying that's tone policing, it's a tactic used by those of us who have privilege to silence those who do not by focusing on the tone of what is being said rather than the actual content. A white person's expression of anger is often seen as righteous, whereas a black person's anger is often seen as aggressive or dangerous. So how many times have we heard, or perhaps have even said, I can't listen to you when you use that tone of voice, or calm down, or those kinds of things. An example of tone policing is what Serena Williams has to put up with when she expresses her frustrations. Part of this is also hegemony and the fact that she's a woman and the fact that she's a black woman. Many white men express the same kinds of concerns and frustrations when they play tennis and don't get called an angry black woman, you know, but so we have this tone policing going on, and we need to be aware of this so that when those things come up in our mind, we can ask ourselves, am I tone policing here? Is that what's going on? And then color blindness. I have family members that say this. They say, I don't see color, you know? I don't know what they're talking. I only see people. Layla said, the belief is that if you act as if you do not see color, you will not do anything racist or benefit from racism. Unfortunately, that is not how white supremacy works. The problem does not go away because you refuse to see it or pretend that you don't see it. Now, unless you are really blind, we see how people's height, we see their weight, we see their hair color, we see their skin color, we see their eye color. You do see these things, and people from diverse backgrounds do not want you not to see them as they are. They want to be appreciated for who they are, and they want to be treated equally. This is a hard one, folks. I will admit to this, and that's cultural appropriation. And it's been a hard one for Unitarian Universalists as well. We have been called down on this quite often. And while I was reading about this, read these books, and one of the things that when I have a hard copy book, I write all on the edges of the books. You don't have to be able to read what is written there. I've just got this as an illustration to note that while I was reading about cultural appropriation, I wrote into the margins, reading this while wearing Mexican dress. I had this dress on while I was reading about cultural appropriation. So I'm asking myself, this is a dress that I bought in Mexico from a little stall. And I say to myself, you know, the woman was quite happy to sell me this dress. And when I see my Mexican-American friends, they always compliment me and wonderful embroidery on this little dress. And can I not wear the dress? And then I just have to ask myself about some of the purposes, about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and how I've been an ally or not been an ally in a particular community. You know, you have some folks that just want to take from a culture, and they're not really caring about the culture at all. All of these folks that want to celebrate all the holidays of various cultures without caring about the people in the culture, you know, is another excuse to party. In her book, So You Want to Talk About Race, Allyship says, she broadly defines cultural appropriation as the adoption or exploitation of another culture by a more dominant culture. So it's one of those things, kind of like racism, that dominance has a hand in this too. Are you exploiting the culture? Are you just taking their music without really caring or doing anything, or trying to be a real ally? Some have gone to an extreme. We had another person, this is sort of deja vu from the professor in Washington State. This professor recently at George Washington University admits that for years she identified as African American. She teaches African American history, and she just took on that identity, just took it. She's not. Now, Bell Hooks has something to say about that. She contends that white desire to feel Black experience is predatory and exploitive. It's eating the other. So it's a question, it's hard. We want to be multicultural. We want to have respect for other cultures. We want to enjoy other foods. But think about what your purpose is, what you're doing, and how you are connecting with cultures in other ways. Are you being an ally, or just taking the culture to enjoy the music or something? We have to watch out for that. And I have been called on this too. So we've tried harder. Like we have still folks that want to like say, why don't we celebrate the Day of the Dead anymore? Well, we celebrated when we had leadership of Mexican Americans that wanted to share with us and wanted to lead us in that. But now that we don't have Maria Salgado has moved, you know, so we don't do that anymore, you know, and we celebrate Kwanzaa if we have African Americans that want to lead us in that and want to share with us in that. But we have to be careful about how we do some of these things. It's a hard one. White centering the whiteness. Under white supremacy, whiteness is seen as the norm. Everyone else is seen as marginal. White is the norm. Like if you ask somebody what an American is, they think of a white American. Also, whiteness is seen as the highest value measure of rightness, goodness, truth, excellence, and worthiness. Is it more like white people do it, then that's supposed to make it more worthy than other cultures. And we tend to do this a lot, even so much so that people who love Jesus had to make him white, you know, blue-eyed Jesus there. If it's good, if it's goodness, it must be white. When I was growing up, I even heard people say things like, if you did something really nice, well, that's mighty white of you, you know. White is right. No, that's not right. And we need to watch out for white centering when we work in this movement and work on our journey. Also, that's kin to white saviorism, the idea of the white savior. Now, I'm not saying these books and these movies are not good, you know, like To Kill a Mockingbird and The Help and The Blind Side. But if this is the only thing you're reading and watching related to these things, then your diet, you're going to have a very bad malnutrient diet. When these are centered on white folks that come in to help and save the Black community. I've tried to make it a challenge for myself to read as many things as I can with Black authors, and fiction and nonfiction. And there is quite a lot of good stuff to read, as many of you all know. Some early examples of white saviorism was the Indian boarding schools, of course. And then also what we see now is high school and college students on mission trips. I'm not saying all mission trips are bad and we shouldn't try to help people that maybe have had a hurricane or whatever. But I think, again, we have to ask, who is this for? And how some people spend loads of money to send their children, send their high school or college students somewhere so they can perhaps have something that they can put down on their resume or take their pictures. Here I am sitting here saving these folks. And so white saviorism is a stumbling block that we don't want to fall into. And then that lives to this optical or performative allyship. The definition of this is allyship that only serves at the surface level to platform the ally. It makes a statement but doesn't go beneath the surface and is not aimed at breaking away from the systems of power that oppress. In fact, it's still putting the white person in the power position. So we have to ask ourselves as we journey and as we attempt to stand with Black Lives Matter and others, how are we doing this and what are we doing? And and are we following the leadership? Here are 3 caution signs that we can lift up when we are doing the work. I'm not saying don't do the work, certainly do, but let these be your caution signs as you do this. One caution is that intention is to avoid being called racist or receive reward through recognition. If you like, I don't want them to think I'm a racist, so I'm gonna sign this survey thing, or I'm gonna go to the rally, you know, I don't want my friends and neighbors to think that I'm not a racist. I want them to approve of me. Is that your intention? Then that's just allyship. That's just performative. Another caution, creates the look of diversity and inclusion without change at a deeper level. It's symbolic, but not substantive. You know, we might think, well, let me see if we can get some more people of color and Black folks to come to our services or put some more pictures in here. If we're just wanting the look, the symbolism without change at a deeper level, that's just performative. And then it's led by a person with white privilege who is not following the leadership of Black, Indigenous people of color, or if it's for Black lives of Black folks, depending on what the causes of what you're working on. So you're not following the leadership of the people who are most affected by whatever we're doing. All of those things are caution signs to look at as we try to move down this road of being a better ally. And then this is one that that actually has been tough for me a little bit lately, is our own weariness, exhaustion, and hopelessness. You know, when I had that slide up about the beach, I said, sometimes we can just stumble over our own feet because we're tired. Sometimes as we are really tired, we tend to just stumble ourselves and fall and mess up. So we have to be very aware of that. Now, here I got really tired this summer when I worked really hard on working with the Willow Hill folks and under their leadership of trying to have this contextual marker for our Confederate statue. And we thought we did all the homework and did all the background and made sure we had the votes before we had the meeting, etc. And we thought we did. And then we got in there and got the surprise that pulled out from under us that no, it was not going to go forward. And I felt really defeated, you know, really like I wanted to, what the heck? But then I thought, you know, that's easy for me I'm white. I could even say, well, this is just too hard, you know, because I'm not the one feeling all the oppression all the time related to this. And that's just not right. We might need a little break, but we can't just stop because we're not as effective. We have to stay in this journey and stay in this fight and stay working hard toward moving towards social justice and dismantling white supremacy. So there are 3 M's I want to share with you though, because we do get a little bit hopeless and exhausted and tired sometimes. And these are 3 M's that I pull on, M and M, when these things happen with me. And the first one, let me come back in here. Oops, well. The first one is Sarah McGettrick's motto that she used to share with us of move. That's the first M. Now, Sarah McGettrick was a beloved member of our UCG community who died with cancer. But while she was with us, boy, she was so inspirational. And she was always telling us, if you got to move, that's what you have to do. You have to move. So I try to do that. I go, every day I make sure I get out and walk. And at the beginning of the year, I was really grieving. I lost my son. I could hardly walk at all. I had to hold on to Greg just to walk down a few steps. But I've worked on it now. I can do my speed walking back and forth, and I move. That's what I do when I get exhausted. I've got to move more, do my yoga, do other things. And then the second M is meditate. Now, some of you may have a spiritual practice of meditation and prayer. But, even if you just take a few moments to have some deep breaths, just stop your day and breathe deeply for a little while. It can make a huge difference. It can shift your being into something that is more hopeful, that is more peaceful, more joyful. And then the third M is music. Music is something else that can shift you. It can shift your being. And I use music all the time. When Sarah was in her last days, I went to see her, and she told me that one thing that was keeping her going was music. And she whispered to me that one of her favorite music, she couldn't talk much, then one of her favorites was Paul Simon's album, Graceland. And she asked me if I would play some of those songs at her memorial service, and we did. I downloaded the whole album, and we played some of them. And now, at this time, this summer, when everything's been so difficult this year, I put that on. I put that album on. And as I'm going down on that walk, that keeps me motivated and keeps me going. Graceland, we're all going to be received in Graceland. Wonderful, wonderful music with Paul Simon and others as well. So those are three things. Now, there's somebody I've been reading about lately because I just finished reading John Meacham's excellent biography about John Lewis. And John Lewis said that one thing that kept him going when the beatings and jailings and everything else was the music. It was the music. It may be in the jailhouse, but they lifted up those songs, and that would keep them going. So I wanted to close out this message with some of John Lewis's words as the years ago. He said, how to march forward. We all can study our history. He talks a lot about the spirit of history. We can all be trained to find our way or to get in the way. If another generation can get in the way or get in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble, I too can do something. I too can get in trouble for the greater good. And he says in the afterword of this book, published afterwards, this journey begins with faith in the dignity and the worth of every human being. That's our first principle, y'all. The journey is sustained by persistence in the pressing of the justice of the cause. And the journey is informed by hope that someday, in some way, our restless souls will bring heaven and earth together, and God will wipe away everything. He also says, I think there's something brewing in America that's going to bring people closer and closer together. We need a leadership of love now, a strong leadership to lift us, to transport us, to remind us that God's truth is marching on. We can do it. We must do it. We have to go forward as one people, one family, one house. I believe in it. I believe we can do it. Amen, John Lewis. Oh, may it be so. May it be so.